va bhutatman adhyana sarva bhutatman kama karmendriya ashayah kama karmendriyashayah moha pasho dridhaschinna moha pasho dridhaschinna bhagavamstava darshanat bhagavamstava darshanat adhyana sarva bhutatman kama karmendriyashayah moha pasho dridhaschinna bhagavamstava darshanat adhyana sarva bhutatman kama karmendriyashayah moha pasho dridhaschinna bhagavamstava darshanat adhyana sarva bhutatman kama karmendriyashayah moha pasho dridhaschinna bhagavamstava darshanat adhyana sarva bhutatman kama karmendriyashayah moha pasho dridhaschinna bhagavamstava darshanat adya today naha our sarva bhuta atman O you who are the super soul kama karma indriya ashayah being under the influence of lusty desires and fruitive activities moha pashaha this hard knot of illusion dridhaha very strong chinnaha broken bhagavan O my Lord tava darshanat simply by seeing you translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. O super soul of all living entities, O personality of Godhead, simply by seeing you, I have now been freed from all lusty desires, which are the root cause of insurmountable illusion and bondage in the material world. Please repeat this translation. O super soul of all living entities, O personality of Godhead, simply by seeing you, I have now been freed from all lusty desires, which are the root cause of insurmountable illusion and bondage in the material world. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta Swami translation. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Preshtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Prachari Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So this is the last prayer by Amshuman. He is offering prayers to Lord Kapila. He is fortunate to have recognized Kapila Muni as not just a sage, but the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, he is addressing Sarva Bhutatman. You are the super soul. Sarva Bhuta Atman. You are the soul of all living entities. Each one of us, each living entity is spirit soul. But there is another soul who is the soul of all souls. And that is Supreme Lord. He has expanded himself and he has entered into the heart of every living being in this material world. And he is the supreme controller of everything that is happening in the material world. He is the controller of all living entities. He directs the wandering of every living entity. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Ishvara sarva bhutanam hriddeshe Arjuna tishtati. Ishvara, the Supreme Lord, sarva bhutanam hriddeshe, the heart region of every living entity, the heart of every living entity. Tishtati, he is seated. And that Ishvara refers to Krishna is confirmed in the 15th chapter, 15th verse. Sarvasya chaham hridi sannivishto. Same thing Krishna is telling in the 15th chapter. Every living entity's heart, I am seated. Hridi sannivishto. Matta smritir jnanam apohanam. And from me, the living entity is getting knowledge, remembrance, and forgetfulness. So, Sarva Bhutatma. In the 10th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna says, Aham Atma Gudakesha Sarva Bhutashaya Sthitaha. Sarva Bhutashaya Sthitaha. I am the soul who is seated in every living entity's heart. So that soul is distinctly different from the individual living being. That we are individuals, even as spirit soul, is confirmed by Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita. In the 12th verse of the 2nd chapter. What is the 12th verse, 2nd chapter? Natvevaham jatunasam natvam neme janadhipaha na chaivana bhavishyamaha sarve vayam atah param. So, we have always existed. Krishna is telling, Aham, I, Tvam, you, and Ime Janadhipa, all these kings assembled in the battlefield of Kurukshetra. So, the Acharyas are very carefully analyzing this statement of Krishna, that Krishna is speaking with regard to himself, first person, aham, tvam, second person, you. He's speaking to Arjuna. So the tvam refers to Arjuna. Aham, because Krishna is speaking, it refers to Krishna. And ime janadipa, all these assembled kings. Third person. So when something is being told about first person, second person and third person, in Sanskrit language it means it is a universal truth. It's applicable for everyone. That's the way the language is to be understood. And also, he is speaking about past, present, and future. Natvam, no, what is it? No, first line. Natvevaham, natu eva aham jatu. In the past and in the present, nacha eva na bhavishyamaha, for the future also. So past, present and future is confirming the individuality of himself and Arjuna and all the kings. Everyone's individuality is confirming. Because this misunderstanding whether inside this body there is one soul or there are two souls. Inside this body, whether there is one soul or two souls. Some places in the scriptures, the word Atma is used for the living entities. And some other places, the word Atma is used for the Supreme Lord. So just like I said in the 10th chapter, Krishna describes his opulences, first of all telling, Aham Atma Gudakesha Sarva Bhuta Shayastitaha. This, I am the soul who is residing in every living being's heart. So this soul residing in every living being's heart is the Supreme Lord. Is the Supreme Lord. And as far as the individual soul is concerned, the individual soul is also Atma, but Anu Atma, tiny spirit soul. And Krishna distinguishes himself as Vibhu Atma. Vibhu means the greatest, the supreme. So this distinction between the two souls in the body is very clearly established in the Bhagavad Gita, which is the verse where Krishna describes himself as Vibhu and living beings as Anu. Where is your Bhagavad Gita? Second chapter, Krishna refers to himself as Vibhu and the living entities as Anu. Anu means very, very tiny, atomic spirit soul. And Vibhu means all powerful. And the 10th chapter, Krishna particularly, Vyasadeva, refers to Vibhuti, the extraordinary opulences of Krishna. Vibhuti yoga. Etam vibhutim yogam cha mama yo vetti tattvataha so vikalpena yogena yujjate natra samshayaha. So before Krishna describes his opulences in the 10th chapter, he says this chapter is actually called Vibhuti Yoga. Etam Vibhutim Yogam. So which is the verse? No, that is the quoted verse, the Bhagavad Gita verse. That is from the Upanishads, the quotation. Anyway, Anoraniyan, that doesn't talk about Vibhu and Anu. It just says, I am smaller than the smallest and bigger than the biggest. That yogis also say, if they have that siddhi, what is that? Anima, Mahima, Anoraniyan, Mahato, Mahiyan. So yogis also, they have that siddhi. Some yogis who have attained that perfection, material perfection, they have that siddhi. But they are not supreme. Anyway, you say later, it's described in one of the verses that Krishna is Vibhu Atma and living entities are Anu Atma. So both are not equal and both are not the same. They're distinctly two identities. And even in the Upanishads, there is a verse that inside this tree of the body, there are two birds sitting. Dva Suparna Sayuja Sakha. Two birds. And distinctly their characteristics also described in the Upanishad verse. It says, one of the birds is trying to enjoy eating the fruits of the tree. It's an analogy, of course. And the other bird is witnessing. So in the 13th chapter, Krishna says that the Upadrushta, Anumanta, Bharta, Bhokta, Maheshwaraha, Paramatmeti Chapyukto, Dehesmin, Purusha, Paraha. So, 13th chapter, Krishna describes two kinds of Purushas. There is a subordinate enjoyer, the living entity within this body, who is actually, can be also called as Purusha. But he is not the real Purusha. He is not the supreme Purusha. He is not the topmost Purusha. He is the subordinate Purusha, subordinate enjoyer. Purusha is the enjoyer. Krishna, who is seated in the heart also, along with the living entity, he is the transcendental enjoyer. Dehesmin Purusha Paraha, transcendental enjoyer. And he is the Upadrushta, he is the witness. Anumanta, he is the sanctioner. He is a sanctioner. So we are not independent in all our actions. We may make a sankalpa. We may have a desire to do something, or we may decide to do something. But that is not enough. It has to be sanctioned by the Paramatma, the Supreme Lord. It has to be sanctioned by the Supreme Lord. All our activities, every living being's activities. So, Anumanta, Upadrushta, Anumanta, Bharta. What is the meaning of the word Bharta? Maintainer. He is the maintainer. Bharta. He maintains all the living entities. He only supplies everything, all the necessities. Eko bahunam yo vidadhati kaman. So he is Bharta, Bhokta, he is the enjoyer. Maheshwaraha, he is the supreme controller. Supreme controller. So, the super soul is distinctly different from the individual soul. Therefore, here, the prayer being offered, Adya na Sarva Bhutatman Bhagavan. Sarva Bhutatman means you are the super soul of all living entities. Of all living entities. And you are the personality of Godhead, Bhagavan, Supreme Lord. So he is praying that simply by seeing you, Tava Darshanat, Kama Karma Indriya Ashayaha Mohapasha Dridhaschinno. Very strong, hard knot of illusion due to the influence of lusty desires and fruitive activities. Kama and karma. Kama is lusty desires. Karma is fruitive activities. So, under the influence of the illusory energy, we are engaged in fruitive activities and we are driven by lusty desires. What is lusty desire? The desire to enjoy materially is called lusty desire. The desire to enjoy materially. We are not meant to enjoy materially because we are spirit soul. So spirit soul means spiritual pleasure, spiritual enjoyment. And that spiritual enjoyment is possible only in devotional service. It's only possible in devotional service. There is no possibility of spiritual enjoyment while we are under the influence of illusion, engaged in all kinds of fruitive activities, or driven by lusty desires. Now, desire cannot be killed completely. To become desireless means Nispriha Sarva Kamebhya. Bhagavad Gita says, Nispriha means become free from all desires which are of the nature of Kama, lusty desires. We have to become free from lusty desires. That means desires for material enjoyment. We have to become free from that. So, these lusty desires are simply coming in the way of our original position as spirit soul enjoying spiritual pleasures. The lusty desires coming in the way. So, this lusty desires, you can become free simply by seeing the Supreme Personality of God. Tava darshanat. And if you become free from all lusty desires, it's said here, these lusty desires are the root cause of insurmountable illusion and bondage in the material world. We are bound up in this material world. We don't have real freedom. What is the freedom of the spirit soul? One of the simple things we can understand is we are free to travel everywhere without any restriction. Second canto of the Bhagavatam particularly explains this. The pure devotees, they are free to travel everywhere. Narada Muni, not only everywhere within the material world, but even in the spiritual world. Narada Muni can go to Vaikuntha also. And he does travel. Sometimes he goes to Vaikuntha, sometimes he's in the material world. So he's traveling for the sake of preaching. He's traveling for the sake of preaching in the material world. The spiritual world, he is traveling to glorify the Lord, to carry out the Lord's orders, to take instructions, to take orders from the Lord. Narada Muni is constantly engaged in that. So he travels everywhere freely. Even in the Vaikuntha Loka, the inhabitants are free to travel everywhere. So this is the freedom which we don't have now. Even if somebody gets some yogic power to travel within the universe to different planets, they cannot penetrate the coverings of the universe and get out of this material existence. That is not possible. 7 layers of covering are there. Each layer is 10 times thicker than the previous layer. So the first layer, if the diameter of the universe is 4 billion miles, the first layer is how thick? 40 billion miles thick covering is there. And then that is not the only covering. That itself is very, very thick covering. Okay. Then there is second layer, 10 times thicker than the first layer. 400 billion miles thick layer of covering, second layer. Then the third layer is 4,000 billion miles thick. Like that. So ultimately, this whole universe, which you think is very big, in comparison to the coverings, it is like a small mustard seed in a huge set of coverings. It's very big. This size of this universe is insignificant. It's insignificant compared to the coverings. And all these universes with their coverings are in one corner of the spiritual sky. So you can imagine how big the spiritual sky is. So the Vaikuntha planets are in the spiritual sky. They are very, very, very big compared to the sum total of all the universes. The sum total of all the universes. Compared to them, each Vaikuntha planet is very, very big. And there are so many Vaikuntha planets. We cannot count them. So therefore, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explains this to Sanatana Goswami. The opulence of the Supreme Lord is that He resides in the personal abode called the Vaikuntha planets, which are many, many, many times bigger than all the universes, material universes put together. So that Lord, who's always engaged eternally in his pleasure pastimes with his devotees, he is very kind upon us and he comes to this material world. But when he comes, he is actually not visible because we cannot see his spiritual form. He comes in a spiritual form. His form is completely spiritual, so we cannot see him. But if we cannot see him, then as it is we are in ignorance about the Lord, so we'll remain in ignorance. So for our benefit, he becomes visible even in a spiritual form. When he incarnates, he becomes visible. But then, when we see him, we confuse or we mistake him to be like another ordinary created being. Like if he comes in his original form, which is like a human-like form, then we think he is an ordinary human being. If he comes in extraordinary form as Narasimha, then foolish people will think, I don't believe such a form exists. Or they will think some mystic power to bewilder the asuras. That's what the asuras think, at least. That some mystic power Vishnu is using to change his form. The asuras do that. To bewilder the ordinary people, asuras change their form. Just like to kill Krishna, Kamsa sent some asuras. They would change their form and come as a calf, as a big snake, python, or as Aghasura, Bakasura, as a bird, big bird. So all these asuras, they misuse their power, yogic power. And they think Vishnu also is having yogic power which he is using and coming as Varaha, Narsimha, or Matsya, Kurma, fish form, tortoise form, boar form. So they avajananti mamuda, then they deride him. They ridicule him. You see? And especially when he comes as human being, they think he is ordinary human being. So therefore, even if the Lord personally comes and he becomes visible, even in a spiritual form, he becomes visible, we are unable to recognize him. So therefore, the scriptures, it is clearly told, don't try to see God, because you cannot recognize. What is the use of your seeing? If you cannot recognize God, then what is the use of seeing him? So therefore, Shastra says, don't try to see him. You rather perform devotional service by which he is pleased and he will reveal himself to you. He'll reveal himself to you. So when you are properly situated in devotional service, the Lord reveals himself. And that is why this Amshuman is able to recognize the Lord because the Lord revealed himself to this Amshuma. The Lord revealed himself. Otherwise, Lord Kapila is sitting there. So many people are seeing 60,000 sons of this Sagara Maharaj. They saw, but what did they think? They could not recognize that he is Supreme Lord. So, until the Lord reveals himself, we cannot recognize him. This is a fact. So, therefore, the Lord appears in the form of the deity. Even the deity form, we cannot recognize that is Supreme Lord. We cannot recognize. Most people think it is some imaginary form or some statue, which some people believe it is God. It is form of God. Some people believe. This is what they say. But even the deity form, in the process of bhakti yoga, we are educated that the deity form is actually a transcendental form of the Lord. It's not a material form. And he has appeared in this form to give us darshan. To give us darshan. And when he gives darshan in the deity form, in the beginning, we are not able to recognize that actually it's a spiritual form. What we see, or we may even touch, and try to feel, oh, is it different than some ordinary form? You touch metal, will feel like metal only. So you cannot perceive this form of the deity as spiritual till the Lord reveals himself. Till the Lord reveals himself. So it is described that we come in front of the deity. It is not exactly that we have to see and recognize. No. We have to come in front of the deity for receiving the merciful glance of the Supreme Lord on us. His merciful glance. His merciful drishti should fall on us. So that's why we should come in front of the deity and offer prayers and stand with folded hands and beg the Supreme Lord for his blessings, his mercy. Then what happens? Our heart becomes cleansed of the material contamination. And the more the heart is cleansed, then the sooner we are going to become purified to be able to actually see the spiritual form, perceive the spiritual form of the Lord. But while we are engaged in this devotional service of coming in front of the Lord and standing and praying and receiving his merciful glance for our purification, we should not keep on contaminating again and again. Just like morning somebody comes for darshan and then they have darshan, they are purified, then they go to do their other activities outside the temple. And that time they should take care not to contaminate The purification has happened, but you again go and contaminate. Then what happens? And that purification is lost. So again next day you come, again you become purified, again you go out and contaminate. So will you ever become completely pure? Never. So therefore, in the association of devotees, you must learn the art of doing your other activities in such a way that you don't again contaminate yourself. You don't contaminate yourself. So that you have to learn from the spiritual master, from the representative of spiritual master, the devotees who are engaged in preaching. You have to learn from them, from the Shastras, from the scriptures. The way to conduct yourself in this material world in such a way that you don't get again contaminated. So that's why in chanting there is a consideration of offenses. Offenses means you are again contaminating. By chanting you are purifying your consciousness. By offense you are contaminating your consciousness again. So don't do that. Don't keep on contaminating again and again. So we say, avoid offenses. Offense is at the level of spiritual activity, devotional service. Whereas sinful activities are contamination at the level of material activities. So while you are engaged in some material activities, you should not do sinful activity. And that's why chanting is told, we are also told, don't at least avoid the 4 pillars of sinful life. No meat eating, no intoxication, no gambling, no illicit sex. And as regards chanting, we are told, don't commit offenses. So materially, don't get contaminated by avoiding sinful activities. And at the spiritual level, don't commit offenses. So you be careful in dealing with deity, in dealing with devotees, in praying to the Lord. You have to be careful to not make offense. So in this way, your purification will happen. You will come to a state of purification where you'll be completely free from all sinful reactions of the past, and you'll be free from all offenses. And then the Lord reveals Himself to you, being pleased with your devotional service. So how to please the Lord by doing our devotional service? By avoiding sinful activities. By avoiding sinful activities. By avoiding offenses against chanting the holy name, against the deity. 64 offenses against deity and 10 offenses against chanting the holy name. So all these seva aparad, nama aparad, we have to avoid. We should also avoid Vaishnava aparad. Of course, Vaishnava aparad is included in nama aparad. So by avoiding, we are pleasing the Supreme Lord. Avoiding sin and avoiding the offenses. We are pleasing the Supreme Lord. then the Lord will reveal Himself to us. And when we see the Lord face to face, what happens? Just like it is said here. Simply by seeing you, I have now been freed from all lusty desires, which are the root cause of insurmountable illusion and bondage and material. Immediately, all our bondage is over. We are liberated. We are purified completely. We are free from all lusty desires. You see? So, even though this form of the deity is completely spiritual, we should be honest enough to admit, I am not able to perceive this deity as a spiritual form right now. Therefore, something more is required. What is that? Purification of my consciousness. So come in front of the deity and expose yourself to the Lord. So that the Lord's glance, merciful glance, in the form of the deity, the glance of the Lord in the form of the deity, should be falling on our self. Then we become purified. So the more you have darshan, the more you become purified and you avoid getting further contaminated, then you become completely purified. You become completely purified. And then you become free from all lusty desires. And you are freed from all bondage. And no more illusion, even in this material world, no more illusion. We're able to see the reality as it is. So, this is the prayer which is teaching us that you should aim to one day see the Lord face to face. You should aim for that. The same deity, when we are fully purified, we will see Krishna and Balarama standing there in their original form, transcendental form. We'll be able to see. Prabhupada gives example of one, I think Vamshi Das Babaji. He used to talk to the deity. Every day he used to talk to his deity. So deity is not ordinary statue. No. Sakshi Gopal, that Brahmana, he had faith. And he knew this deity is not simply some statue. So like that, so many examples are there for us. Kshir Chor Gopinath, for the sake of his pure devotee Madhavendra Puri, he stole a pot of sweet rice just to convince us that that statue is not ordinary doll. It is not lifeless. There is a Supreme Lord with all his potencies. He is standing there to receive our seva, to cast his merciful glance on us, and to actually give us all kinds of benedictions, to answer our prayers. So like that, the Lord has appeared in this deity form. Therefore, we should be very careful in dealing with the deity. And we should take advantage of the Lord's presence as the deity, appearance as the deity, Archa Avatara. Archa Avatara. That is the incarnation of the Lord as the deity. And we should properly offer prayers, we should properly bow down, we should properly stand with folded hands in a mood of humility, very humble way. We should beg the Lord for His mercy upon us. And then the Lord will be very pleased by this attitude. Very quickly will become purified. So I'll stop here. Antara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.